Malden Neighbourhood Committee, whether here in person or watching on the webcast. My name is Councillor Leslie Heap and I'm chairing this meeting this evening. In the event of an emergency and the sounding of an alarm, the emergency evacuation procedure is to leave by the main staircase and congregate at the front of the building. Anyone requiring assistance should remain in their seats and an officer will assist you from the building. This meeting is being filmed for live broadcast on the Council's YouTube channel, and an archive version will be available to view on the Council's website after the meeting finishes. The broadcast will be suspended during any adjournments in proceedings and if the committee resolves to consider information as exempt business. Please can everyone present in the meeting ensure that their mobile phones are switched off or in silent mode for the duration of this meeting. Thank you. Right, who is here? We have councillors from the wards. I'm just going to go round very quickly to introduce them. You probably know many of them already. We have Councillor Richard Thorpe from Motsford Park and Old Malden East Ward, as well as Lynn Henderson. Coombe Vale Ward, we have Andrew Bolton, Kamala Coogan and Andrew Sillett. 3 councillors there. From Green Lane and St James, we have Councillor Yvonne Tracy and Councillor James Giles. Myself, Leslie Heap, and then also in my ward I have Councillor Mark Durrant and Councillor Robert Kim, and from Old Malden Ward, Councillor Mike Massini, and waiting for Councillor Park to arrive, I think. So that's everybody, as well as a number of officers in attendance who are going to present reports and advice during this meeting. Also,
he's not here at the present, but I believe he intends to be here.
So I can just read
that.
Yeah. Also, we have Councillor Ian Manders, who would like to address the meeting this evening for item 8 under procedural rule 27. Does the committee agree to this, or do we have to go to a vote?
Agreed.
Has everybody agreed? Yeah, thank you very much indeed. The first item on the agenda is public questions. Do we have any questions from a member of the public on items that are not on the agenda tonight?
No, Chair. No.
They're not on. No. Apparently not. Moving on to the next item, item 2, which is petitions. We have received notification of an intention to submit a petition this evening from Councillor Yvonne Tracy. Would you like to go over to the public desk and with your petition, and you have 2 minutes in which to present it. So just when you're ready, just say, turn on your mic and Sam will start the clock for you.
Is this one just...
Oh, sorry. Sorry, it's me.
Oh.
That one's always on. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Madam
Just
Chairman.
ready.
I'd like to present a petition to this committee that I ran during my election campaign to fix the Kingston Road cycle lane. It has 172 signatures. Of the 4 main things that residents spoke to me passionately about, only one has been recommended for improvement here tonight by the Lib Dem administration. I think that's a great shame. Residents across Green Lane and St James elected me against strong Lib Dem campaign predominantly because they feel like me that we must fix the cycle lane. The petition reads, we, the undersigned, called on Kingston Council to immediately fix the cycle lane, including reinstating the right-hand turn filter lane at South Lane West, replace the wands/bollards with curb height segregation and change the bus stop figuration. We call on the council to use some of the £200,000 neighbourhood seal fund to fund these fixtures. I won't say any more at this time because I know we're going to discuss it later, but on behalf of the residents, I urge all Lib Dem councillors here tonight, please do the right thing. Just listen to the residents. It's the least our constituents deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tracy. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 3, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies tonight and any substitutes?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Item 4, declaration of interest. Members are asked to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other registrable non-registrable interests relevant to the items on the agenda. Do members have any declarations? Please indicate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Kingston Independent Residents Group, and by extension myself, are founding members of Kingston CAN, which stands for Clean Air Now, and we've been lobbying the council since 2019 to introduce 20 mile an hour across all the borough. It's a non-pecuniary interest, but I thought I should declare it.
And I'm the same, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Anybody else got any interests? No? Okay. Moving on, item 5. Do members agree to the minutes held on the 6th of December as a true and correct record?
Agreed.
Agreed? I can sign those. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Item 6 is promotion of the first draft local plan consultation presentation. Okay. And we have Wilson here tonight, who's come along to give the presentation to us and the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. My name is Wilson Liu, and
Put your mic on.
hello. Okay. And I am here this evening to promote our public consultation on the draft local plan. And I have a short presentation I'd like to share with you. Okay. So what is a local plan? Well, a local plan is a very important planning document. It will set out the planning policies for new developments and inform the assessment of planning applications received by the council. The new local plan will also include a long-term vision and provide the framework for how our borough will change and evolve over the next 15 to 20 years. It will also set out the policies to help us deal with important issues such as planning for climate resilience, the protection of our natural environment, biodiversity, and ensure we direct developments to the right place. So the local plan is part of our development plan, and the local plan sits alongside the London plan, which provides planning policies on a strategic level and on London-wide matters, and the South London Waste Plan, which focuses mainly on waste developments. We also have a designated neighbourhood forum in the borough, and so North Kingston Neighbourhood Forum is currently preparing a neighbourhood plan, which will also set out local planning policies for their designated area. Together, the development plan sets out the planning policies that we use as a council to assess all the planning applications received. And once adopted, the new local plan will replace the existing core strategy and the town centre action plan, which was adopted back in 2012 and 2008. In general, there's a lot of flexibility in how we prepare the local plan, but it needs to be consistent with national policy and be in general conformity with the London plan. So, just a quick timeline of our plan making process so far. This is the third public consultation we have done for the local plan. Previously, we have held consultations in 2019 and 2021, which gathered views from our local communities on key issues we should look to address in this new plan. However, this is the first time we have set out the draft planning policies and site allocations for development. Once this current round of consultation ends, we will review your responses and feedback and produce a publication version of the draft plan and consult again. Based on our understanding of the timeline, we will look to submit the plan for examination towards summer of this year and hold examination in public towards the end of this year. Okay. So The consultation will run until the 28th of February this year. The full draft local plan document and other supporting documents are available to download from the Council's website. You can also view them in local libraries, including New Malden Library, and the Council's office at Guildhall too. We also have an urban room set up in Kingston's Market House. Also available online is a short explainer video and easy read and translated versions of the draft local plan document. To support our consultation, we have been holding a number of online webinars and in-person events across the borough. Details on the time and date of these webinars and events are available from the Council's website. And we have a number of events coming up this month at Chessington, and webinars focusing on specific topics on natural environment, climate change, and on design. We are also meeting with a number of local groups and key stakeholders, including the forestry sector, to ensure that a wide range of views are taken into account as part of this consultation. So a short overview of the policies covered in the local plan. The local plan is structured around different policy themes. So we have chapters on housing, design, historic environment, natural environment, for example. Most of the chapters include a strategic policy setting out our commitment and expectations for that policy area, which is also supported by a number of more detailed development management type policies. There's also a chapter on site allocations, which puts forward a number of development sites for housing and mixed-use developments over the local plan period. The proposed vision and the list of objectives for the borough by 2041 are set out in the draft document. To summarize our aims and objectives of the draft plan, we will become a more sustainable borough. Developments will achieve net zero carbon and contribute to our climate resilience. Promote exemplary placemaking through high quality and sustainable design, and require developments to respect the borough's heritage and character. Provide enough homes to meet current and future needs. Support a strong and resilient local economy and adopt our town centres to the changing nature of high streets. Also, we will work with our partners to identify and coordinate the delivery of necessary infrastructure to support the development coming forward. So just a quick recap. The consultation ends on the 28th of February this year. We welcome any comments you have on the draft local plan, but it will really help us if we focus discussions on whether you support the draft policies in each chapter or not. Is there anything you would like us to change? And is there anything you would like us to add to the plan document? If you are interested in finding out more, obviously you can come along to one of our meetings and events or sign up for one of the webinars. You'll be able to speak to one of our policy officers on the contents of the draft plan, or just come along if you want to chat with us about planning, point out instances where planning decisions in the past could benefit from a stronger local policy. Now's your opportunity, that's the tagline. The easiest way to comment on the draft plan is to complete an online form on Kingston's Let's Talk portal, or fill in a postcard at one of the events. Or if you prefer to email us your comments, our email address is localplan@kingston.gov.uk. You can also write to us to the strategic planning team at the Guildhall 2 office. That's the end of the presentation, and thank you for everyone's time.
Thank you very much, Wilson, for the presentation. Do any members of the public have any comments or questions they would like to ask about the local plan? If so, could they indicate? No? Okay. Then I will go on to members if they would like to make any comments to Wilson about the local plan or anything they want to clarify or such like. Anybody? Councillor Giles?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wondered if there was any update on when the SHLA might be published.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Giles. The SHLA will be published early February, and sorry for the delay. Thanks.
Anybody else got any comments that they wish or questions they want clarified? No? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that and bringing it to our attention. We'll move on to the next item. Thank you. Oh, yes, Wilson. Right. If you wish to leave, you may do so. Thank you. The next item, 7, is the New Malden High Street Regeneration Programme and an update on that. This is basically to provide an update to the committee on the progress of the New Malden High Street Regeneration Programme and to receive views on the approach and delivery of projects within the programme for 2023. I'd like to introduce Anna Doyle and Nikechi, sorry I've forgotten your last name, who are going to present to us this evening. Thank you very much indeed.
Great, thank you very much. Is this on? It's on. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Yes, so I'm Anna Doyle, this is Nkechi. We're from the Kingston Council High Streets team. So we're just going to give you a short overview of what we've been doing and working with you and the community over the past couple of years. We're aware that not everyone might know who we are, so we just thought we'd give you a bit of an overview first of all, just in terms of like who we, what our team does. So the High Street Recovery and Regeneration team, we've been in existence for under 2 years, about a year and a half, and essentially we were formed in response to all the things that were happening post-COVID, but also before COVID, the challenges that our high streets and town centres are facing. So we work with colleagues across the council in a very collaborative way, but our focus is very much centred on town centres and high streets. We have a dedicated New Malden League, which is Nkechi, and we work very closely with Megan and other colleagues too. So, I might just go to the next slide. So, our programme essentially is a programme that is formed through using an approach called co-design, which we can talk about in a minute. But one of the things that we've been working with the community over a number of years is listening to you and working out what do you really want, what are your priorities. So some of the key sort of themes or priorities that we're addressing are supporting our high street businesses, working with our economy team, economy enterprise and skills team. We are helping sort of look at the public realm. There's obviously all different parts of the council that address all different sort of big infrastructure projects. But we're sort of really focused in on sort of looking at the public realm that you experience every day, including this new town square that we're going to be talking about. We're also are focused on how we can animate, which basically means how can we bring the high street alive through working on things like events, arts, cultural initiatives, community projects, growing projects, all those kind of things. And also one of the key things, and I want to stress how unique New Malden is we have been working with you and the community to help form a Town Centre Partnership, and we're very pleased we've got the chair here tonight with us as well. Not all areas in London, not all boroughs have Town Centre Partnerships. It's very rare actually. So a Town Centre Partnership in New Malden is something that's very precious. And it's something that we're, I hope you're really proud of. If you're not aware of it, for anyone who might be listening in, it has its own website, and I probably will dig that out before we finish talking. But those are sort of like some of the key themes and the key sort of objectives that we're working on the high street. So I mentioned a co-design approach. Essentially, it's really simple. We're working with the community. We're not doing what's called a top-down approach. we listen to you, we work with you, and the partnership essentially is one of the key kind of groups that has all sorts of members that represent and come from different groups and parts of the community as well. So that approach is really embedded in the way that we work and in the way that we're trying to work with you to facilitate positive change in the high street. And partnership working, obviously, is a really key part of that. I've just talked about the New Malden Town Centre Partnership, but essentially this was established in 2021. We also, I'm going to talk a little bit about funding, but we're able to create an employment opportunity, a community connector called Danielle O'Shaughnessy, who many of you may know, and she works with the partnership. She also sort of works with us. We have a chair that's been appointed recently, who I've mentioned before, and the partnership has grown. So it has its own website, it has its own social channels, and it's there really to sort of help work out what do you want to see in and around the town centre, and how can they work with us to see how we can facilitate that. There's so much that's going on, and one of the things that the partnership are working on at the moment is an action plan for the town centre for this year as well. So that's something that's bubbling away in future years as well. So what are the things that we've actually been doing working with you? As many of you know, there's a new town square, Jubilee Square. There's a picture, I think, there that may have shown a little bit of what was actually there before. You will be very aware of that. So that was something that our team and our predecessors helped sort of facilitate. It is a new piece of the public realm. It's an amenity space. So one of the things also, it's not just about providing that space, that square, but it's also around how is that space going to be used. So we're here working with the partnership and working with people in the community to sort of try and activate it, which is fancy language for that, actually seeing how can that square be used, what benefit does this bring to the community. So we've been working with people in the community as well as a partnership with students from Kingston University, some of them who are local to here, with artwork, sort of making the hoarding that's up at the moment look sort of vibrant and dynamic. There's also community growing groups. We've had events that some of you may have been to. We launched a big Jubilee event last year that the partnership were very involved, basically led and delivery of. There's stacks of things, and then Ketchy is going to talk more about some of the things that are happening. So I think I'll just talk on this one, and I might hand over to you and Ketchy. So just in 2021, when our team was sort of just formed, there was actually a fund called the High Street Recovery Fund, and the council sort of launched. And one of the things that the community did, just as the partnership was forming, was that they were successful in getting funding to help kickstart some of this sort of new wave of high street improvement, including banners and high street lighting. And as I mentioned, there's artwork and there's all sorts of things and all sorts of groups, including the Camera Club and Historical Society, that were in terms of that co-design approach, working collaboratively to create new benefits. So I might hand over now to Nkechi, because I'm aware I've spoke a lot, but one of the things that we were really proud of, one of the big milestones that we created and that we helped facilitate rather, was securing funding from the Mayor of London. They have this big scheme called the High Streets for All Fund, which derived out of a strategy called High Streets for All, about how can we support our high streets. So New Malden was one that was selected out of many boroughs who weren't successful, and New Malden has been badged an exemplar high street. So I'm going to hand over to Nkechi now to talk a little bit more about the actual programme, because Nkechi's been working closely with the community. So over to you, Nkechi.
I think one of the key points in terms of trying to animate and activate the town centre is really trying to test and trial what works with the community, especially on Jubilee Square, because it's what we call a meanwhile square. So really understanding what works there and how we can sort of build a legacy based on trialling and testing different things. And also showing what we can do with limited funds. So we don't have millions of pounds to spend on the town centre in New Malden. So really working with the partnership, with the local community. We've had regular gardening events led by the partnership. Good Gym have come to help maintain and look after the square. Arts and crafts activities have been held on the summer. Also the very large scale events led by the partnership, and this weekend we're going to have the Tamil Heritage event on the square as well. And then we've got a community grow-in project that started on the square as well. So allowing different parts of the community to come together on the square and test different things. Some of them led by the partnership, but really this year also focusing on attracting new different organisations onto the square to really test out what works, so we can sort of build that legacy. We're also supporting businesses in New Malden. So again, with the GLA funding, we are able to fund the startup of a New Malden Business Forum. But they've had support from the Kingston Chamber of Commerce. And towards the end of last year as well, we also focused on promoting businesses in the town centre as well. So we don't have a business improvement district in New Malden. So really thinking through how we support and promote different businesses and encourage footfall into the high street and the town centre, and encourage people to spend money with our local businesses in the town centre as well. So we've created a New Malden Business Directory. That was trialled in the lead up to Small Business Saturday last year. And it was really positive. We had about 40 sign-ups in the first kind of 6 weeks of launching that directory. And what we want to focus on this year is encouraging more business to sign up and sort of building that business community in the absence of a bid who would normally take responsibility for promoting businesses and supporting different businesses as well, and helping businesses to promote themselves on social media and other channels so people are understanding what's unique about New Malden and want to come and visit. In terms of a forward look and what we're trying to do for this year in particular, we have got additional funding from the GLA to focus on culture and art in the town centre. So we are going to be working with the community to develop ideas and different ways to involve the community in shaping different pieces of art and work to kind of make the town more beautiful. And then the partnership are also working on developing an event to mark the coronation in May. So this again is an opportunity to sort of bring different parts of the community together and really showcase what New Malden has to offer. One of the key projects as well for this year is kind of really coming up with a concept and a design that people are happy with for the green space outside the Environment Centre. So we've called it a pocket park, but around the Fountain Roundabout. So we've been going at this since 2021, I think. So by January we had... Oh, sorry, there's a slide. There's a slide missing. Sorry about that. So October 21, we started with a company, a design company, to come up with a concept. And we had an initial design by January. But then by February 2022, Storm Eunice happened. So that caused the damage you see to the tree outside the Environment Centre and to the fountain itself. And that's kind of changed the scope of that project and the scheme that we deliver in the end. So what we propose to do is really come up with a scheme and take on board the initial concept we had, take on board kind of comments that we've received to date and the fact that the damage has happened in these areas. And we want to try and have a design competition, so attract kind of different types of practices to really think through and work with the community in terms of what works best in this space and come up with a concept that we can then take to the design stages. So that's kind of a big one that will happen for 2023. And that's it in terms of the update.
So we welcome any comments or any feedback, questions that anyone might have, either in the room or not. Chair.
I've got a few comments.
Oh, would you like to come to the desk, please? Thank you. Can I just say that as we have two large items on the agenda tonight, I'm going to limit the questions and comments tonight on this, but and those that want to speak, we do have a registered speaker as well. But if you would like to go ahead, just introduce yourself briefly and ask away.
Hi, I'm Stuart Newton.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I'm Stuart Newton. I live locally. I've just got a few questions regarding the New Malden town centre. We talk about how to get the best out of it, but we've only utilised about 25% of it because we've got 4 lanes of cars going on the New Malden High Street, 2 which are parked, 2 which are slow moving. And at the same time, we've got 2 huge car parks at one end, 1 down the far end, and there's about 10% utilisation, and they are probably the cheapest car parks I know of in London. Why aren't these utilised? Why are we allowing parking on the high street for people, for general public? Okay, disabled parking, I understand. But every other parking, why is it not? Why can't people walk the 100 metres from the car parks to the high street to maximise it? And one final question, how often do we, on the busy days, do we monitor air quality on the high street when we have parked traffic, basically 4 lanes of traffic, 2 parked, 2 moving at about 1 mile an hour? Because at the moment, we're talking about maximising the high street. If this was a business, we're maximising nothing.
Thank you very much for your questions. I think just to address your first question, we, as I mentioned, sort of in terms of like the traffic and the use of the roads, we do actually have some colleagues here actually from the highways team who might be able to be better placed to answer that. But just to be really clear, these are things that in terms of our role in the high streets, we work very collaboratively with all of our colleagues to try and listen to you and see like how we can all work together to improve the experience of the high street. So just in terms of car parking and the use of car parks, one of the things that we're really interested in our team is if things aren't working on the high street, we like to sort of listen to you and then go back into the council and work out, are there better uses for these kinds of things? So just to give you an example of somewhere perhaps elsewhere in a different part of London, car parks that sometimes aren't always being fully used are used for sort of other kinds of uses. And I know what you're saying is you're thinking like, why is there parking on the high street when we could potentially be using these car parks? Those are things that perhaps we can go back and discuss and inquire with other colleagues who sort of work in those departments, and if you like we can take your details and perhaps we can be a conduit for sort of like answering some of those questions in full for you. Would that be okay for you?
Yeah, I'm just really interested because I've spent 7 years as a transport consultant, working for the largest transport consultancy in the world, and this has been rolled out across the country. I worked on a scheme all over up north, looking at car park allocations, car parking pricing schemes to actually work out how companies can actually maximise their income. Companies spending millions to work out how they can actually maximise their income, and we just leave it dry. And in terms of closing off high streets, I've done surveys where we closed off high streets in Bury up north in Manchester to see how it works. At the moment, nothing seems to be working. Shops are dead because no one wants to work on them. There's air pollution.
I think the only thing I would add as well is that we do have plans to install some traffic movement sensors on the high. There are none on the high street in the town centre, New Malden at all at the moment. So our team are leading on installing those so that we can at least make evidence-based decisions in terms of what we do and inform that.
Do you ever do any of the surveys to see when the cars are, I can't remember from years ago by, the surveys where a car enters, you work out exit points to work out where these people are actually going, because you can't just shut it down completely if you've got no options, but you can do origin and destination surveys to work out where based on registration plates where people are going, because you may find out that you actually don't need it all. But I'm quite intrigued to kind of speak more and see what we can do.
What I would suggest as well is if you're interested, do look at the partnership, because the partnership is something. The partnership is a place where we can really sort of look at these things in more detail, and also we work. Got RA's team. We work really closely together, and it's this kind of feedback that's absolutely crucial for us. Actually looking at how we can improve things in the high street.
I mean, you look at
It's
Kingston,
really
incredible. People complained when it got changed. Wouldn't change it back. Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you. Can I call Simon Edwards, who had asked to speak in advance on this matter? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief because I know you've got a very busy evening ahead of you, and I think you may be hearing from me again anyway. As you know, I'm chair of the New Malden Town Centre Partnership. I work on that very closely with Nkechi, Anna and Meg, and my fellow members of the partnership. we're, as Anna and Ketchy have said, we're working on a large number of projects this year. One or two haven't got mentioned. I'll just fill in some of those, which we're in the process of. Some of you will have noticed on the square that 3 of the raised beds have been turned into what might be termed in old-fashioned parlance market gardens. And that's a project for creating food, learning about creating food, and as that food grows, so the partnership in association with Orlaw, which runs the project, will be running food to table, or table to food, I can't remember which way around it is actually, sessions where people can come along, taste the food, learn about growing your own food. That's just one example. On the hoardings, we're working with local schools to get art from local schools on the hoardings. In relation to, you've heard about the coronation, that will be a big event like the Jubilee, but we had a couple of smaller events over Christmas as well, which were well supported and showed what could be done on the square. They were sort of experimental, quite small scale, but we hope to be able to scale them up for next Christmas later this year. There are all sorts of other exciting things going on. We're in the process of applying for some NSIL to create a sort of shelter cum pavilion cum performance stage on the square, which will be a permanent fixture, sustainably built, and will provide shelter from the elements and a place where people can perform without having to bring their own stage and so on. But that's just a sample of what we're doing. We'll be working together with Anna and Ketchy and Meg on what happens around the fountain. We're very anxious at that area, which I suppose we can all admit is perhaps untidy. Look better as what is in effect the entrance to a large part of New Malden. And we've got other ideas on the boil, which I could go on, but I won't, because I know you've got a very busy time. We meet regularly. We meet once a month to discuss these things. We work also with John Leslie, who is the creative producer for the big grant that RBK got from the GLA, and that will produce some really excellent stuff. Not only necessarily on the square, but also within the high street itself, because from my point of view, what's important is to try and link the two together, because we need that linkage to get people from the high street onto the square and vice versa, so the whole thing works better. Anyway, I've talked probably too much. If anybody wants to know anything more from me, you all know where I am, and I'll leave you to the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Are there any other comments from the members of the public before I move on to members' comments? No? Okay. Moving on now to members of the committee. If you wish to make any comments to Nkechi and Anna, please raise your hand. Kamala? Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know whether this will work. Okay. Just to say, yes, that's really great, especially about the performance stage as well. Another thing I'd like to add was when we had the Remembrance Sunday, I thought it was a really lovely villagey feel to New Malden High Street, which I've never experienced before, so well done to everybody who did that. The only thing I was going to raise was about bike thefts. I don't know what the latest statistic is, but so many people are losing bikes that they're parking at the station. So we also need to stamp out that kind of petty crime. So I'd like to see some involvement in that as well, please. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just a very brief one. I knew some of what the Town Centre Partnership was doing, but I didn't know everything in this presentation. I think two things that stuck out to me were the exemplar High Street status that the High Street was awarded. I wasn't aware of that. And also I wasn't aware until a local business tipped me off about the New Malden Business Forum. So I guess my only comment to try and build on that is really just a request to consider just disseminating information to councillors where appropriate, because we can obviously put that out to our community connections. I mean, all of us here have a number of different connections that we can reach out to. And so that was really my only comment is I think it's great work, but I think we could shout louder about it, because I think if some of us here don't know, then the members of the public certainly don't know.
Thank you, Councillor John.
We will be, one of the reasons we're here tonight is to, to make sure that everyone's aware, but absolutely we can talk internally about that, and also we're here, we're an open door, so do contact us, but absolutely, thank you for those comments.
Any other members got any comments to the presentation? No? Councillor Durrant.
Thank you. It was just a real quick comment just to say, I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. It's clear, looking down the high street, to have hardly any void shops is pretty remarkable, really, if you think about things and in this day and age as well. So that's obviously excellent to see, and some of the events that are happening as well. I believe there might be a street food stall thing going on shortly as well. So there's all sorts of exciting stuff and reasons to come and visit New Malden. So it was just a comment to say, great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durrant. Anybody else got any comments? No? Thank you very much, Anna and Nkechi. You may leave the room, as they say, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you. We're just going to slightly alter the agenda, and I'm going to take the Neighbourhood Manager's report next, because relatively to the other items it's fairly short. So I'm going to introduce Megan Mellor to give her report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my report is very brief this evening. A few updates that I'd like to share with you, that we have a cost of living bus that is travelling throughout the borough. The cost of living bus will be coming to the Hook Centre, which is south of the borough, on the 16th of Feb, and dates will be confirmed when it will be coming to New Malden Neighbourhood in the future. An exciting event this weekend is the Tamil Heritage event, which Nkechi mentioned. So it will take place on Saturday, the 28th of January, in Jubilee Square. It will be 11 a.m. till 3 p.m, and you can drop in throughout the day to enjoy some of the celebrations taking place. And lastly, I want to share with you about a community safety survey, which I think will quite help Councillor Coogan in relation to the bike thefts. The Safer Kingston Partnership is a multi-agency group, including the police, local authority, fire brigade, health and probation services. And the group's goal is to keep Kingston a safe and vibrant place to live, work and learn. And they work together to ensure Kingston continues to be one of the safest boroughs in London. This is your chance for you to get involved and make your neighbourhood a better place to work. And you can fill out the survey going on to the Let's Talk portal. So that's kingstonletstalk.co.uk/community safety survey 2022-2023. And I can share the link to that, can be circulated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Megan. Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, 8, which is the Kingston to New Malden cycle route review. To present the Neighbourhood Committee the outcome of the Kingston to New Malden cycle route review, and to seek approval for the recommended design changes. Please note, everybody, and I hope you've had a chance to read it, the late material circulated this evening in relation to Annex 6 and 7 that was omitted from the agenda papers. That's the first point. And then, I'm not sure who's going to come forward and just take the other things. Thank you. Where's Ian gone?
I suggest we do that first. This bit first, and then get him to introduce.
Okay. What's happened to Ian? What's happened to Ian? Where's Ian? Can we just wait for Ian to arrive? His coat's
He left the room and took the door first on the right.
Toilet.
Okay.
But we won't interrupt him. We'll wait for Councillor Manders to resume. Shall I?
You can start with this bit.
Right. Okay. While we're waiting for him to come back. I'd like to propose the recommendation as set out on page A1 of the report, which you have in front of you, Appendix A. And also, the committee resolves that because of its strategic nature, Neighbourhood Community Infrastructure Levy funding, that's NSIL, not be pursued for this scheme, and funding issues to be referred to the Place Committee. I just wanted to ask Lamat. So, Councillor Henderson, do you second me?
I
please,
second
on
that, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm hoping that Ian's going to come and speak on this bit, unless you're going to start, Matt.
I'll go find him.
Can you just knock on the door?
Just be polite, please. Name badge. He's not. Yes, so Matt or Mohammed, would you like to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So in summary, this is a report that we've taken, an identical report actually to Kingston and just noticed it says Kingston and New Kingston, it should be Kingston and North Kingston Neighbourhood Committee on Tuesday night this week as well. And it concerns the Kingston to New Malden cycle route review. Obviously quite a large chunk of the cycle route sits within Kingston and North Kingston, probably about 2/3 and 1/3 within Malden and New and Old Malden. So really, the report is to present to the Neighbourhood Committee the outcome of the review that we've undertaken and to consider the next steps. So just to update on the review which we undertook and to recommend next steps, which are effectively the recommendations that officers have put in there are to approve the detailed design and construction of the proposed changes to the routes that we're recommending, delegate the authority to the Assistant Director, that's myself, in consultation with the portfolio holder and the Chair, to undertake some variations to those designs and construction, to set aside the one objection received to the experimental traffic management order for the section between South Lane West and Rodney Road, and the explanation of that is detailed in the report, and to authorise a new experimental traffic order for the section between Georgia Road and South Lane, which doesn't currently have an order, as they're not currently enforceable. Just very briefly, so members will be well aware, and people in the audience will be well aware of the work that's gone on at Kingston New Malden Cycle Route, which is part of the Mini Hollands programme that was funded by TfL. The programme effectively ran out of money in mid-22, essentially due to the TfL funding position, which you will recall because of COVID and so on, went on for some time with TfL having to rely on bailouts from Department for Transport, so many of the sort of bigger projects were stopped. So firstly, the cycle routes that we developed in 2021 and 2022 were de-scoped to a certain extent from what was originally approved by committee, and then they were stopped completely. So the section within Kingston New Malden has mostly been constructed, but to a lower standard than perhaps we would have originally aspired to, and the section within Kingston and North Kingston has largely not been constructed at all. So effectively what the report's done, because of the hiatus with funding, we took the opportunity to do a review of both the two unfinished routes, which is this one and the Ewell Road. We sought feedback from the community and from stakeholders, and took that on board, as well as doing road safety audits. That consultation or that engagement exercise and a call for evidence happened in the autumn, so September and October last year, and this is really to bring the results of that back to the neighbourhoods to consider. And so in total, to finish the route in total, we've estimated at £1.9 million, but actually the unfinished bit within New and Old Malden neighbourhood is only about £150,000. We've then estimated the cost of what we've classified as some essential changes at £170,000, of which the bulk of that is in New and Old Malden, and also some non-essential changes, if you like, nice-to-have elements that if we were to find the full funding, and that's around £195,000, and again, most of that is in New and Old Malden. At the moment, the routes are not funded. We have in the report outlined some possible sources of funding. We continue, obviously, to highlight these routes with Transport for London, and they're top of our sort of list of priority schemes for Transport for London, but there are other opportunities as well, whether it's through SIL or other funding pots. And just quickly, I suppose, I don't want to go into too much detail for too long, because a lot of this is detailed this is all detailed in the report. But some of the key themes around that we were looking to sort of make improvements. Some of it's around the shared use bus stops. Some of it's around improving some of the shared use areas, particularly where we've got waiting and loading facilities. And they're probably the biggest two sort of items. It was interesting to note quite a bit of the feedback we got from the public was around those issues. And we know that some of these, there are quite a few design constraints in those areas, but we have suggested some improvements that we think we can put in. Just quickly as well to say that as part of the engagement, and this is outlined in Para 16, in addition to the sort of general public call for evidence, we did speak to local organisations. We spoke to Kingston Cycling Campaign, Kingston First, albeit less relevant at this end of the route. We spoke to all the emergency services and local disability groups as well. So we tried to capture as many interested parties as we could. I think that I'll probably leave it there and then leave it open. I don't know if Councillor Manders wants to come in at that point at discretion of the chair, or whether over to the chair.
I'll wait until
to the public questions.
To answer any questions, really.
Right, okay, thank you very much.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Sorry.
Just hang on a minute. So we'll have the questions from the public next.
Sorry, it's a point of order.
Councillor Giles.
Sorry, under a point of order, Madam Chair, Procedural Rule 27 allows for an elected member that doesn't sit on this committee to speak to the panel. It does not give any provision for members answering questions or asking questions. I've experienced this a number of times, most recently Councillor Manders and I, on Tuesday at the North Kingston Neighbourhood. The member has the ability to speak on the item at the same time as the public, but the procedural rule does not give any provision for any member that does not sit on this committee to answer questions nor contribute to the debate.
It's true that you can't contribute to the debate. Yeah.
But you can ask questions.
Technically, he can speak on the item.
But he can reserve that right to speak later.
Yeah, they can do that.
Yeah?
Yeah, as long as it's not in a debate. Yeah.
So, for questions.
Not to answer, necessarily to answer
So
questions.
what do you want me to do then? So he speaks now?
You can speak later, yeah.
Speak later.
Yeah.
Speak later. Right. So, do we have any questions or comments from the public on this item? Please indicate. Yeah? You put a question in, did you?
Comments.
A comments.
The gentleman that provided that document.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
Graham
He wants to provide some comments.
Beresford.
Yes.
Right. So do you want to come forward and put your comments? You're going to have 2 minutes because, as I say, we've got two large items. So
well, I'd like to start with something positive.
Just hang on a minute. When you're ready to
you
speak.
Give me 2 minutes.
Yeah,
When
but I'm
does it
going to
start?
time you. So when you're ready and we're ready, you can put the mics on. You can go
Okay.
ahead. Is that all right? Thank you very much. When you're ready. Thank you very much.
I'll start with something positive. I'm not against cycling. I'm not against cycle lanes. The Kingston, the Rains Park to New Malden thing is great. The Kingston Road cycle lane is currently an abomination. It looks incompetent. It looks like you've just been given some money by TfL and decided to spend it somewhere. I've handed out that, so you know what I'm prepared to put in writing rather than say verbally. I don't know whether anybody's cared about air quality. If you really care about air quality, you don't build cycle lanes on main roads. I'm astonished that European Commission research is not more widely known. I have actually sat on the bench at the roundabout and counted on 3 or 4 times, and it's 2 cyclists for every 100 people going down there. So it's making no difference to air quality. It's making no difference to Londoners' health. It's making no difference to anything as far as I can see. It's not delivering more people to Kingston Station or New Malden Station, if that's what TfL's objectives were. I don't know what it's for. I really don't know what it's for. I can't find a single business case for it. I put in writing about the alternative route. I know 3 cyclists who don't use it, who don't use the Kingston Road, wouldn't dream of it, and they go the back route by Berrylands, which is already marked as a cycle route. I don't know why that hasn't been given more publicity, and you could have tarted that up without spending millions on the Kingston Road. I think it's a scandal. It looks incompetent. Thank you very much.
Yes, well done.
Thank you, Mr. Beresford, for your comments. Anybody else? Simon Edwards has already registered to speak, so if you would like to come up to the desk, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief if you're ready. Yeah. Yes, obviously a controversial project. It's worth bearing in mind its genesis, which the officer pointed out, that it's been a long time coming, this cycle lane. I think it was first mooted sometime in 2015 or 2016, when it included then the proposal for a new junction at the Fountain, which was rejected. And the scheme went ahead then after a very full consultation on the basis of the Kingston Road up to Rodney Road. Now, I recall when I was a councillor and I was chair of this committee that the scheme was one of the last to be implemented. And because of the delay that had occurred between the start of the borough-wide scheme and the one in New Malden, there was a further round of consultation on the Kingston Road section of it. And this was before COVID and before TfL ran out of money. And there was a consultation then, and the consultation sessions I attended and others around this table attended were broadly speaking positive as to the scheme and its then proposal. Then, of course, unfortunately, money ran short, and as we've been told, it became a slightly attenuated scheme and then a completely truncated scheme. In other words, it was cut off halfway through. With the benefit of hindsight, if we'd known that was going to happen, that it was going to be cut off halfway through? Well, I think we might well have thought differently about it, but we didn't know that. That's just life. We couldn't know that TfL would say, okay, finish it at Georgia Road. Thanks very much. But that's where we are. We are where we are, as that rather horrible hackneyed phrase says. My own feeling is that it works pretty well. There are issues with it. We have to accept that, but I wouldn't want the committee to start spending many thousands of pounds on it. In particular, South Lane. I use that road quite a lot. I turn right into South Lane. People do let you through. I agree with one thing about what Councillor Giles says. It doesn't need a box there. I agree with that. Some white lines saying keep clear would be plenty. Anyway, don't spend money on what's not needed. You've got the evidence that there are a few real problems there.
Thank you, Simon.
So bear that in mind. Thank you.
You've gone over 2 minutes. Thank you. The next person I have registered to speak is Andy Allen. If you'd like to come forward, please. You'll have 2 minutes as well.
Thanks. My name is Andy Allen, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the Kingston Cycling Campaign. First, I would like to reiterate a point made on Tuesday evening at the Kingston and North Kingston meeting, that this important cycle route is only partially built. There's a short section at the London Road end and another short section built at the new Malden end. So we need to be careful about looking at how many people are using it already. It's a bit like a bridge that's still under construction, with only a little bit constructed at each side so far and a big gap in the middle. We welcome the report in general and support many of the suggested changes, particularly those addressing safety issues. However, we do need to press councillors to consider moving more quickly with the topic of parking bays in the bike lane. We appreciate our objection to the ETMO being included in this report, and we draw members' attention to the fact that the 2 bays in question mean that even if the rules are enforced, the cycle lane is still obstructed 84% of the hours of the week, through both being used as loading bays during some parts of the day, but mostly by being used as unrestricted free parking. Paragraph 34 of the report recommends 3 options to be investigated, and we urge the members to decide this evening to direct officers to use their ETMO powers to implement 2 parts of these proposals immediately. From option 1, to extend the current restrictions over the weekend, and from option 2, to ban parking in the bays whilst retaining the loading hours for now. We do support all the further changes suggested in these options, such as relocating the bays, but we realise they would take longer to investigate and implement. However, the 2 changes we highlight here tonight can and probably should be implemented without further delay. Thank you for the opportunity to raise these points, and I'm happy to clarify any of the details in our objection if that would be helpful.
Thank you very much, Mr. Allen, for your comments. Another person who wishes to speak, was it Stuart Newton, who spoke before on the High Street? If you'd like to come forward, you also have 2 minutes in which to make your comments. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. I've actually cycled all over Europe, from Valencia, all over Europe, and Berlin, Germany, France to Holland. And I actually feel like the cycling facilities in the UK is like a third world country. But what they're doing at the moment is a step in the right direction, and I applaud what they're trying to do. We have funding problems, yes, but what you've done is incredible. People say it's not required. I cycle all over the borough all the time. And I cycle from Oxford Park, the actual road, up Malden Road. There's a cycle line. Cycle lines mean nothing to cars. And I've probably been virtually hit off my bike about 10 times, pushed off by about that much. What we're doing with segregated cycle lanes, it's the only way you're going to get people onto bikes, is to create a safe environment for people to cycle. You can argue all you want, to your death do it all, that cycle pass won't get used. You just have to go around Europe where you get proper, professional, segregated cycle pass, where it's a connected network, as the Kingston cycling person said. Things will get used. The idea they won't want to get used is because at the moment, as they stand, they're not safe enough because they're not connected enough. And you have to keep them segregated from cars because cars do not know what their space is for. Cars moving in and out of the lane until you actually can stop them, they will keep doing it. And one question for probably Councillor Giles is probably, why do we have curbs in the UK? Because I know you're pretty well anti-cycling. It's to stop cars moving on to paths. That is a segregation between people who walk and people who drive. And that is segregation. That's what you have to do to make sure that cars do not move on in the way of cycles. So keep up the good work. Funding's an issue, but let's just keep on going. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just your 2 minutes there. Is anybody else?
Point of personal explanation, Madam Chair.
Does anybody else?
No, point of personal explanation, Madam Chair.
Oh, right, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have never made any statements suggesting that there should be no segregation on the Kingston Road cycle lane. Thank you.
Right. Anybody else from the public who'd like to make some comments on the cycle lane review? No? Okay, thank you. Right, I'd like to call Ian Manders now to speak on that before we go to...
Can I speak after?
No, you're not. Apparently you're not allowed to. You have to speak now because when the debate moves, it's between us and the officers, not a councillor.
Okay.
I'm told.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I'd like to just introduce Councillor Ian Manders, who's speaking in accordance with Procedural Rule 27. Councillor Ian Manders, if I can introduce him, is the portfolio holder for climate action and sustainable transport for Kingston Council. Thank you, Councillor Manders.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Some of you know that while I'm kind of new this time round to the council, having been elected in May, some of you will remember that I was on the council previously between 1984 and 1999. Well, I can say, Chair, is I did start very young in that case. But and I have been interested about hearing some of the things tonight because I was involved the first time round with the cycle lanes, and I was one of the people instrumental in the route through Berrylands that one of the members of the public highlighted, and the cycle bridge over the Hogs Mill as well. So that route. So it's clearly something I know very well, and I live in Berrylands, very, very close to it, and I use the route that the member of the public has highlighted on a regular basis. However, when I go to New Malden, which I do quite frequently, and I then go to Kingston on my bike, then I will use Kingston Road. It's the fastest way to do it, and so I do know the cycle lanes very well. And in fact, before I was elected, I went to the leader of the council and I said that I wasn't happy with the cycle lanes at the moment, as the way they were constructed, and that I felt that we had to do a review as soon as possible. When I was chosen by the Liberal Democrat group to become the portfolio holder for sustainable transport, I immediately ordered a review. And the first thing I asked officers to do was to contact the emergency services to see whether there was any concern on their part with the safety of Kingston Road as affected by the cycle lanes. And that included also whether they were being held up, effectively by, as it were, the cause of the cycle lane. Now, I'm very pleased to say that the answer back from the emergency services is that they weren't inconvenienced by the work on the cycle lane. But I felt it was important that we got that out of the way straight away. The next thing that I asked the officers to do was to set up a review in which we would ask members of the public and also interested organisations such as the Kingston Cycling Campaign to contribute their ideas about how we could improve the cycle lanes as well. And then the final thing was, I said, we've got to finish these things, so we've got to put the money together to do so. So we've had this period of the review, and I think it's been very constructive indeed. I think there's been a lot of very good ideas being put forward by members of the public, and we've got a way to go to fix that tonight. When it comes to the Kirk Amendment, then there may well be, Chair, some good ideas in here. I don't know. I mean, I'm just disappointed they weren't submitted as part of the review. Or perhaps they were. But anyway, it's the first I've seen these particular suggestions tonight. And I'm quite willing to ask officers to go away and look at some of this. However, I'm afraid when it comes to basically bringing back a kind of waiting lane in the middle of the road for motor vehicles to turn right off Kingston Road into South Lane, I'm afraid Kirkham are going to be disappointed. Having put in the cycle lane, there's no more room for a third, basically a third lane of traffic at that point. So I'm afraid, I think that one of the suggestions is actually not actually viable to do. However, there may well be, Chair, as I said, there may be some things in here which may be of help to us. So I want to move now, Chair, really onto the funding of this. So the discussions that I've had with the leadership is that these cycle routes, and there's also the unfinished cycle route in your road as well that we need to complete, are a strategic resource. And they're not something that we would expect a neighbourhood committee to fund. So, Chair, as you know, later on, as an amendment has been passed to you to move this to Place Committee for funding. Place is the place, Chair, for this to be fixed. And it also, there's an opportunity for Place, representing the council as a whole, for us to obtain funding from perhaps from various sources. But whatever it is, anyway, we're committed to finishing these cycle lanes and to fixing some of the minor issues and so on that have come up and that has been exposed as part of the review. So, Chair, I think I'm going to finish at that point. I'm in a difficult situation where I'm trying to anticipate what people are going to say because I'm not allowed to come back and say anything afterwards. But all I can say is that I think we're making, now a positive move to get this right, and I recommend this report to the committee, and I hope you pass it, and I hope you move that it should be paid for by Place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Manders. Right, we're going to move on to questions from the committee to officers.
I'd like to propose an amendment, Madam Chair.
And your amendment is, Councillor Giles?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Like to briefly explain what it is?
Well, yes, but I do need to explain it, Madam Chair, in order for members to understand it. I present before you this evening, handed out, and there's also some copies for members of the public, some amendments to Annex 2 and some amendments to the recommendations. The first amendment, if you like, is with regard to Recommendation 1, which is that the designs are subject to final sign-off by this committee, once detailed designs are produced and any minor amendments are made, and by virtue of that, removing the second recommendation. When this scheme was approved in February 2020, not November, as the report erroneously claims, there was a recommendation to delegate any, quote, minor design variations to officers. Now, I also supply a A3 sheet by leading architect firm WSP. This is a council document. The council commissioned WSP to come up with the original design of the Kingston Road cycle lane. And WSP, a leading firm of consultants and architects, very clearly show that there is room, if we narrow the cycle lane to the minimum allowed by law, we narrow the pavement slightly for a right turn filter lane to be implemented. This is a council document that shows it's feasible. So if Councillor Manders will forgive me, I'll go by what WSP says rather than by what some consultants here this evening say that can't even produce us detailed designs. Now, because of the mess that was made in delegating authority to officers the first time around, which resulted in, among other things, the filter lane being removed, I'm sorry to say, I don't trust the officers to mess it up again. We're elected to represent residents. We're elected to represent our constituents. Therefore, all I'm asking is that a final sign-off, once there are detailed designs, once amendments have been made, that we get the chance just to scrutinise it once more and we get a final overview, so that when our constituents say to us, what are we doing about the cycle lane, we aren't left in the dark. We know exactly what's going on, and so that's why number 2 is struck off. The third recommendation, which you can see in writing, I won't read it out, serves to remove the parking and loading on the Kingston Road, and by virtue of that make amendment to the TMO, which we are able to do as the Highways Authority. It is obscene to me that the recommendation as it currently stands is to continue to allow parking and loading in the cycle lane. The point of a cycle lane is for cyclists to use it. If they can't use it, it becomes a danger to them, a danger to motorists, and a danger to pedestrians. And so I'm asking us to use our powers that we have to stop parking and loading in the cycle lane. And I would also add that the ETMO, as currently provisioned, did request the council to introduce some parking and loading bays in Penrith Road, in the side road, which has not been done as of yet, but when the TMO is made permanent, I hope will be done, which will negate any negative impact on local businesses that may be affected by this. And the final one is to rather amend now Councillor Heap's additional recommendation, which is a recommendation to the Corporate and Resources Committee to seek funding for this scheme. The Place Committee can deal with the design of this scheme, but the Place Committee has no budget setting power. The power of budget setting rests with, would you believe, the Finance Committee. Therefore, I'm recommending it go to Corporate and Resources instead of Place. Place can deal with the designs, but it in itself does not have the power to create an additional budget line. Finally, Madam Chair, with respect to the changes in the annex, which I hope members will agree are sensible, just very quickly if we go through, the only changes in this annex are to add the words slow on the cycle lane at 4 bus stops where this isn't currently proposed. This is an additional safety measure for both cyclists and pedestrians as they're getting off the bus. The second is to remove provision for a yellow box junction along the westbound lane. All that will do is penalise drivers, unsuspecting drivers, and actually in many cases hinder the traffic flow. I also suggest removing the proposed bell bollards at the Elm Road junction. Those are the small bollards that are sort of ankle height on pavements. And on the high street, as many members will no doubt know, many motorists often get their vehicles caught over these bollards. If we want bollards, we need to have proper waist-height bollards that are visible. If I turn over to the next page, we must remove the London Road South East crossing and Lady Jane Court from ponding. This committee doesn't have any jurisdiction over London Road or Lady Jane Court, therefore we cannot approve those designs. That is a Kingston and North Kingston neighbourhood decision to be made, not a New Kingston, but a North Kingston decision. It's yet another error in this report. We have no authority to approve that this evening. If I turn over again, and if members turn over once more, to remove all of the loading and parking bay amendments, because of course the amendment as a whole seeks to remove parking and loading in the cycle lane. And other than that, I think it's absolutely fine, Madam Chair, largely as it stands. And so I hope that members will agree that these are some really sensible and practical suggestions that will improve safety for pedestrians, improve safety for cyclists, and go a long way to fixing the cycle lane. This is a neighbourhood decision. We have the power to shape the design. And what's more, this amendment ensures that detailed designs by surveyors, by architects, come back to this committee, so that if anything in here actually needs to be tweaked, residents can scrutinise it, we can scrutinise it, and we can actually get this mess sorted once and for all. I recommend it to the committee.
Councillor Giles, do you have a seconder for your proposal?
Yes,
Can I
I'll
say who
second
they
it.
are, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tracy. Do I have any questions from members of the committee to Councillor Giles on this? No? Okay, we're going to go to a vote then.
After that, there should be a debate, Madam Chair.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. Would members like to debate this and give their comments? I can't. Councillor Massimi, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
No, it's okay, thank you. Good evening. I just want to understand fully, and there seems to be a lot of technical issue or I would say tension around the scheme and the design. Am I right to understand that this was finance, scheduled, ordered, and ultimately paid for and implemented by TfL, although incomplete, and therefore all of the current question mark improvement or blockers that we prefer to see changed or removed were at the time approved and signed off by TfL as part of a project that they validated as safe and sound. So that is a question I'm asking, and that might lead to another question afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the officer like to answer that question, please? Thank you.
That on? Yeah, the red light doesn't work, sorry. Thank you, Chair. So ultimately, for this road, Kingston remains the highway authority, so the Borough of Kingston is ultimately responsible for what happens on that road. But the nature of this particular project was that it was funded by Transport for London, and it was designed and built very much in partnership with Transport for London and, as far as possible, to Transport for London standards. So in terms of the actual designs, the ultimate sign-off on the designs would sit with us as the highway authority, but TfL had that sort of sign-off at every stage as well.
Another question? Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Okay, that's fortunately or unfortunately what I understood. So therefore, some of my colleagues are questioning TfL expertise, design, and recognize failure in the delivery of the scheme. That's my understanding. And therefore, I will just want to make sure that everyone is aware of some of those questions raised by people around the expertise of TfL tonight, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much, Councillor Massimi. Anybody else wish to speak on this item?
Yes, please.
Councillor Tracy.
Thank you. I would like to speak in full support of this amendment, which will go a long way to fix the cycle lane on Kingston Road. I was pleased to read from the review that the bus stops are going to be reconfigured to ensure that passengers alighting buses will have measures to ensure that they do not collide with cyclists. That will be a marked improvement and the shared space that exists now at bus stops. But what is missing in the current proposal is slow marking on cycle lanes for cyclists as they approach certain bus stops. I think it should be on all the bus stops, but this amendment would fix that. And the removal of the filter lane at South Lane West for vehicles heading towards New Malden causes congestion, as vehicles wishing to turn right now block the entire car traffic flow, as only one vehicle at a time can pass on that side of the road. Reinstating the filter lane would allow a much better traffic flow. The suggestion of having a yellow box junction at the junction of South Lane West and Kingston Road, with the potential to fine vehicles that get stranded across the box, is going to cause worse traffic flow in some instances if it's implemented. During peak times, it will cause hesitation for road vehicles heading towards Kingston, as when a vehicle starts to move from a standing start to cross the junction, by the time it reaches the other side, a vehicle from South Lane West could well pull out, which then leads the vehicle to be potentially getting caught in the yellow box junction and just be fined. I mean, it's crazy. We saw in February 2020 that the road is wide enough for a cycle lane and a filter lane, but delegation to the officers meant that it was removed from the plans without any resident or councillor consultation. This review reinstates that lane and also makes sure that we as residents representatives are getting proper oversight and scrutiny of the final designs. And this amendment goes one further in stopping cars being able to park and load on the cycle lane. I mean, what is the point of a cycle lane if the cyclist can't use it? We all agree this is madness. We must ensure that the permanent TMO is amended to reflect that vehicles cannot park on cycle lanes. This is what residents demand from us. This is what we must deliver. All of you are knocking doors in Green Lane, you're knocking doors in the village. You know the strength of feeling, and it's time, as representatives of the residents, to put the residents before any party line or whip. I mean, I think most of the residents thought that when they were told on the doorstep that a review would be done, they assumed to address the residents' problems, not carry on regardless, and in the case of South Lane, West Filter Lane, actually make it worse. At the very least, I think residents will feel misled.
Thank you, Councillor Tracy. If nobody else has any comments or questions, we will move to the vote. And this is a vote.
Sorry, Madam Chair, as the proposer of the amendment, I believe I get to sum up on the debate. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's only a brief comment, just to say that every councillor, I believe with the exception of Councillor Park, attended the walkabout that you organised to look at the cycle lane. We all agreed, and please, someone correct me if I'm wrong, we all agreed that there were measures that needed to be taken. Things like improving the bus stops, which this amendment would address with the slow signs. We all agreed that parking in the cycle lane was absurd, and the recommendations as they currently stand would allow that to continue ad infinitum, because if we don't amend the traffic order now, we will need to move a new traffic order, which will incur additional expense. We already don't have the money to fix this cycle lane as it is. So let's get this sorted now. We agreed to other things. A number of members here told me personally how they wanted the right turn lane to be reintroduced. The consultants that we employed showed this is possible. And so I would urge all members, if they're true to their word and what they said, to vote for this tonight. And if there are any issues, it will come back to us for a final sign-off. If we don't support it, we get no more say, we get no more oversight, no more scrutiny, because we're delegating that to the officers who, I'm sorry to say, led us into this mess in the first place.
Thank you. So can we move to the vote now? With a show of hands, we're going to vote on Councillor Jar's amendment. Do I have to read out the whole? Has everybody got the amendment in front of them that they can see? Okay. So we're going to vote on Councillor Jar's amendment as laid out in his documents here. Those in favour? That's 2 in favour. Those against? And those abstaining?
3, Chair.
Therefore, that's carried against?
It's refused.
Refused, yeah. Thank you. So now we will move on to the substantive motion. Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have one final amendment to move under Procedural Rule 19. Up to 3 amendments can be moved. I'll only be moving one more amendment, you'll be pleased to hear. I do have some sheets which can be passed on this way. They're only short, and some sheets which can be passed on this way if people would be so kind. It's a very simple recommendation. To replace, quote, add wands at 4 metre spacing in accordance with the rest of the scheme with, quote, add a cycle segregation curb along the entirety of the scheme constructed so far. Far from being anti-cyclist, this would actually give what the cycling campaign and what residents actually want. Instead of obstructive wands, come bollards, we would have a full, proper, concrete curb running along the length of the cycle lane. Funding has not been identified for any of the improvements in this project. And if we actually are serious about improving safety for motorists, for pedestrians, for cyclists, we should be demanding better. And we should be demanding some proper segregation that works for everyone. A curb height segregation, as detailed here, would achieve that. And I'm hoping that all the members, a number of whom spoke against the bollards, I remember Councillor Massini unscrewing one from the Kingston Road, realising they're only screwed in bemusement. I'm hoping all of these members here this evening will agree to this proposal, which is most sensible, and recommend that the Place Committee or Corporate Resources, or Place Committee as it now stands, although it will end up going to Corporate Resources, I'm quite sure, actually we make the recommendation to Place that they fund this in the interest of safety for all.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Do you have a seconder for your proposal?
Yes, Madam Chair, I second that.
Thank you, Councillor Tracy. So, same procedure as before. Does anybody have any questions to Councillor Giles on this matter?
Can I make a comment?
Comments or questions will be fine on this further amendment.
Is this microphone on? Yeah. I mean, some of these ideas sound interesting and feasible and sensible. I don't know. I've been seeing them 15 minutes before the meeting. I really wish they were incorporated during the very long consultation. And, you know, I don't want to hold up. I want to get this cycle lane fixed. People are angry about it, both cyclists and motorists. So I just really want to get it through. I don't have enough information about costs. I haven't had chance to ask officers about this. It's too late. It's just come too late. So the reason I abstained was, you know, some of the things sound sensible, other things I don't agree with in the package, but that's all I really wanted to say. It's just come too late. I wish it was in the consultation and we could have discussed it and examined it a bit more detail.
Thank you, Councillor Zillard. Anybody else got any comments? I've got a comment, but I'll leave that till the end. Anybody else?
Councillor Durrant does, Madam Chair.
Oh, I didn't see him. Sorry.
Yeah, I just sort of, I mean, I'm sort of in the same position as Councillor Sillett there, and I, you know, particularly this, it seems like an interesting idea, but does Councillor Giles have any idea what the cost of it would actually be, or are we going to put that through to Councillor Manders and others?
Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To address both of these points, if I may, these issues were fed into the consultation. Representations were made by many people saying that they felt the current segregation actually wasn't suitable at all. The fact remains, as I made the point on Tuesday at Kingston and North Kingston, we don't have a consultation report here. Normally when we do a consultation, we get, albeit names redacted, a full set of responses to what people have to say. And we as members get time to scrutinise those, read them, because everyone has an important contribution to add to this, as did we during the cycle lane review. You know, to say, for example, within the report, A13, theme, general traffic lanes are narrow, number of mentions 89, that isn't proper feedback, that's not a proper consultation response. A number of people said some really detailed things. We have people here tonight that have a lot of expertise. Mr. Newton as one example. I'm sure people like Mr. Newton had a number of detailed comments that we as councillors haven't seen, because it seems to me this is a flawed consultation. So in terms of the exact cost, councillor, I don't have a figure here, but frankly, I don't have a figure for any of the things in this annex, bar pie in the sky overall figure, because there's no detail in this report anywhere. It's a load of nonsense. And so if we're recommending to the Place Committee that they fund designs which we are supposed to approve this evening, we have the power to approve the final design, then actually it's the responsibility of Place to try and find the money for that. And I would actually go so far as to say that this would go for me in the quote, if you like, for want of a better phrase, nice to have, if the funding can be identified.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. I'd just like to make one comment. You said consultation. This was a review, not a consultation. We had the consultation for the cycle review back in 2020 or end of 19, whatever it was, before COVID. So this was a review which we have undertaken. I have a comment on the picture that you've just given us. That concrete looks very harsh to me. I think if it may be okay for a car to bump into it, it warns them that there's a cycle lane there, but for a cyclist, that could be quite dangerous. And also in relation to pedestrians, where the relationship to the pedestrians are, that also could be quite a hard barrier, as opposed to the ones which are very flexible, and if you touch them, obviously they bounce a bit and give, whereas this concrete curbing seems to be quite rigid and dangerous. That's my comment. Does anybody else have any more comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. Councillor Tracy. Thank you. Yes, I'd like to just say something about the wands or stroke bollards. The wands separating the cycle lane from the road at Rodney Road were universally opposed. Even cyclists I spoke to didn't approve of their use. Yet the recommendation taken forward is to extend their coverage across almost the entire distance of the cycle lane. The public perception is that it does affect emergency vehicles in peak hours, as other road vehicles are unable to pull over to the side of the road till ambulances or fire engines pass at the current short stretch of road. So I don't understand what will happen if bollards are extended to all the stretch of the road. It would be so much better to consider an alternative like Orcas that vehicles could drive over to allow emergency vehicles to pass. The bollard's positioning results in difficulty for cars to access Kingston Road as well, which some of the larger cars means that they have to pull out to swing on tight corners, which is by no means an easy feat in rush hour. They have to pull out and make sure both sides of the roads are clear. It's quite hard, I can speak from experience. And the cycle lane space where the bollards are currently located, they're extremely dirty and full of debris. I walked along the other day, and I'm told this is because the contractors are unable to clean their cleaning equipment.
Councillor Tracy, comments. Can I draw you to an end now, please?
Yeah, I'm almost finished. I just want to say that it looks dangerous for cyclists because there's twigs and everything, but apparently they haven't got the equipment to clean those sort of roads. So we do need proper segregation that will allow cars to pull over and let emergency vehicles pass, and that provides security for cyclists. This is what residents want. Residents have spoken in large numbers. They deserve to be listened to, I think. Thank you.
Any more comments before Councillor Giles sums up? Councillor Massimi.
Thank you. As much as I take every point on board, and I think there's some good ideas and suggestions from everyone, I think we need to be very thorough. Whatever we might vote for tonight doesn't mean that the scheme is set in stone. There will be a 12-month review and will be analysed. Yes, they might incur slightly more cost by doing this, but sometimes it's the best approach to get things moving, especially with the tight deadline, and we have to have this potentially completed over the next 2 quarters. And I also just want to go back to my colleague who said the residents have the impressions, they believe, they feel. We need to stop this impression. There's fact and figures. We have asked, we have calculated, we have engaged with the ambulance service, with the PCO, with the local police, and with every emergency vehicle. There is no further delay with the current scheme and the current layout. It is an impression, and also we need to make sure that when we talk about residents, most of the residents at the times, and still today, I believe, are in full support of a workable scheme for the mobility of every user, including drivers. The impression and the sensations that, like the 20 miles per hour, we're going to waste more time, it's going to be slower, it's going to pollute more, those are not proven by fact and figures. There is no delay and there are no concerns raised at any stage since the consultations and then the review from the ambulance and from all emergency vehicles. This has to be a fact and not an impression talking to some. Same for the cyclist. A cyclist might say that they don't like the bollard, they like the bollard. That is not the point. If we built it, they will use it. and we will keep improving based on feedback. We need to move at pace. We need to make a decision and get this sorted due to a failure of a lack of funding and a lack of scrutiny and a lack of follow-up from TfL, which now we have inherited. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Massimi. Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I guess on Councillor Massimi's point, 117 people in the review, 115 people in the review had a perceived negative impact on emergency vehicles. We asked the public what they thought and they told us. But let's leave that issue to one side, because actually the point about bollards versus a curb has nothing to do with emergency vehicles. It's a matter of safety. And for me, with the utmost respect to the chair, I think the concept that a curb is harsh might be one of the most preposterous things I've ever heard. The curb that is proposed and the curbs that are used in many other cycle schemes across the UK and Europe are the same as a curb at the side of a road. They're not dangerous to pedestrians, otherwise we wouldn't have curbs to separate the road from the pavements. It strikes me as just absolutely preposterous. If we want proper segregation, if we want safety for cyclists and motorists, the safest way of achieving that is by having a curb height curb, funnily enough. We've spoken at some length about, again, on our walkabout, how we would like to consider other forms of segregation. This wasn't taken forward in the review, but again, I come back to the consultation here. I take your point that this was not a public consultation, this was a public engagement exercise, but it was put on our consultation portal. If you engage with the public, you are consulting them, you are asking for their views as part of this review. I, therefore, as a member, expect to see what the public have to say. If we look at Annex 3, there were some really detailed questions asked of the public. What type of road user are you? Why do you use the cycle lane? And then from that, what are your views? I don't know what cyclists had to say about bollards. I don't know what motorists had to say about bollards, because the information here is completely inadequate. What I do know, through the public engagement that we ran and fed into the review, is that a paramedic did write in as part of the public engagement saying they felt it caused them a delay. That's from a paramedic based on the Wellington estate. That's not reflected here because the information provided by officers is inadequate. But coming back to this amendment, finally, if it's truly about safety for cyclists and motorists, we need a curb. I was accused earlier this evening of being anti-cyclist, but the most anti-cyclist thing of all here this evening is to approve more bollards instead of a curb that will provide safety for everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Right, we're now going to go to the vote for the second amendment, as detailed here, by raising your hands. So those in favour of the amendment...
Madam Chair, sorry, I'd like to call a roll call vote on this, please.
Will hands not be sufficient? You're going to see who's voting.
No, I'd like, for the sake of the recording, a roll call vote, please.
Right, thank you very much. Just wait for Sam to get there. Do it by ward, yeah? Okay. You're going to do that, yeah. Yep.
Thank you. I'll abstain on this. Thank you.
Councillor Coogan.
I'll abstain as well, thank you.
Councillor Sillett.
I'm going to abstain just for the aforementioned reasons.
Councillor Tracy.
I agree with the amendment. I'm for the amendment, sorry.
Councillor Giles.
For.
Councillor Henderson.
Against.
Councillor Thorpe.
Against.
Councillor Durrant.
Abstain.
Councillor Heap.
Against.
Councillor Kim? Against. Councillor Massamy?
Abstain.
Councillor Park? So, Chair, that is 4 against, 2 in favour, and 5 abstentions. So the amendment falls.
Thank you, Sam. Right, so moving on to the main motion, just to remind people, as in Annex A, in case we've forgotten. We now move on to the debate, although a lot of people obviously have said quite a few things already, but we will move on to the debate of the cycle review. So, do members wish to make any comments? First of all, Councillor Bolton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is more of a general comment that's been kind of brought up, but it's one of the few things about this that genuinely keeps me awake at night, and that's the safety of it as far as the emergency service is concerned, ambulance, police and fire brigade. Now, I know that we've heard, and it's in the report, that they, to paraphrase, had no particular problems with it. I am like quite a few people around this table, although I understand what Councillor Massimi said recently about this. My perception is that I can't quite understand why there aren't any delays to the emergency services, but nonetheless, that is what they've said, and I completely accept their view. But I just wonder perhaps if Mr. Hill could answer this question. When were the emergency services asked about this? Was it very recently, and is that their settled view, or would they need a bit of time for the whole thing to bed down and then perhaps come back with a slightly more pessimistic view, do you think?
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. The emergency services were consulted either at just before the public or at the same time as the public, so back in the summer, autumn of last year, from memory. So, I mean, what I would say is that, you know, we have an ongoing dialogue with the emergency services anyway. I mean, if we built something that the emergency services had a big issue with, they wouldn't wait to be asked. I'm pretty sure of that. You know, there is an ongoing dialogue between ourselves and the blue lights in that sense. So.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's encouraging to know, because it does sound as though they were originally asked quite some time ago, but if you're confident that if they had a problem, they'd have this open channel of communication with you, then that's good. Thank you.
Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some questions to the officers, please. Thank you. Paragraph 22 of the report says the responses to the public engagement were analysed by independent consultants. Now, I'm not talking about the consultants who did the road safety audit. I'm talking about the consultants that analysed the responses and clearly gave an inadequate high-level overview. Who were they, and were they accredited by the Consultation Institute? Because the Consultation Institute would never allow an engagement process like this to produce such shoddy feedback to members.
Chair, if I could just respond to that by saying we engaged with a reputable firm of engineering consultants who reviewed and prepared the responses. I couldn't tell you now whether they were members of the Consultation Institute or not, but I'm happy to go away and take that away and check if you like.
Thank you. But can I just clarify, please? And this is all from public information. The officer that was responsible for the cycle lane review is himself a consultant from a traffic consultancy. When you say independent consultant, that would suggest that they are not employed or contracted by the council. They're engaged purely to do that task. So can I please clarify that the consultants that analysed these results was not the same consultancy, with respect, that Mr McTarby works for, given he was a council contractor contracted to undertake this cycle lane review. An independent consultant to me means someone independent of the review process.
If you're not, yeah.
I mean, I can reply to that as best I can. Any consultant that we use is retained by us in some way, and I'm not sure. Okay, we can argue about the word independent there. You know, the fact that the people that did the review, or the person that did the review, was not on the council's payroll as a fully paid salaried member of staff is, I think, why we've used the word independent. But by its very nature, any consultant is going to have been retained by us. So if that's not independent, then you know, I'm happy to reconsider that word. But I think the fact is that we've used a reputable, experienced people to prepare the report.
Thank you. I'm not getting a clear answer, so I assume that to mean yes. With respect, and this will be the last point I make on this.
Yeah, but can I just say, I think the officer can let you know who that person is.
No, that's
we
fine.
don't know that person.
No, that's fine, Madam Chair, but the response I seem to be getting from Mr. Hill indirectly is that the firm that analysed the public engagement results is the same firm that supplied our consultant that conducted the review. Now, to me, that's not independent of the process, and further, I would contend that an independent consultant wouldn't have an RBK email address. That doesn't seem to me to be very independent, but I'll leave that point. But I would strongly suggest that the committee are being misled in this respect. So as I say, I'll leave that. Paragraph 34 of the report talks about investigating the feasibility of restricting parking and loading on the Kingston Road. Now, councillors have already voted against amending the TMO this evening. And so my question, perhaps for officers, but perhaps for you, Madam Chair, is if we aren't amending that TMO this evening so vehicles will still be allowed to park on the cycle lane, where will the money come from, and when are we expected to have a report back to this committee on that feasibility? Because there's nothing in this report that recommends we look at this item again.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Chair, if I could, I mean, essentially what the officers are saying here is that space is used for parking and or loading. There are options for how much or little of that we want to provide, and that's why we've presented those options. The issue of parking and loading along that stretch was considered quite carefully at the original consultation, but you know, none of those. I suppose what I'm trying to say is none of those options. There's no change to the physical layout. It's about changing a traffic order and changing time plays. So it would be a relatively simple exercise in the future to bring that, and a relatively cheap exercise in the future to bring back further amendments if it was felt that that was the time to change those restrictions. That wouldn't be a difficult or expensive process.
Thank you. Madam Chair, can I ask why you don't consider it prudent to stop parking and loading in the cycle lane now?
That's a question, sorry.
Yes, that was a question. I was asking why you don't feel it prudent to stop parking or loading in the cycle lane now. Why do we have to keep on having an unsafe cycle lane?
Safety is of paramount importance, but there has, as you can see from the report, the option that was given, the business is very much in favour of some sort of loading arrangements there. If you're lifting heavy things to a shop or whatever, you can't be expected to park miles away from it. So there has to be some availability of loading and unloading and parking, but not where you go and park for an hour and go and shop somewhere, but just quick unloading, 20 minutes and that. And I believe that's what we're going to be putting into those cycle lanes. So in the hours of rush hour, morning and evening, they will be free for cyclists. But during the day, businesses have to be able to operate. Otherwise, the businesses are going to go out of business.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing is that at the evenings, there's no restriction on parking, and you're not proposing any restriction on parking. So all evenings and all weekend, vehicles will be able to park unrestricted in the cycle lane. And so that, to me, seems a nonsense. But I do just have one final question, Madam Chair, and that's with regard to equalities. Many members will know that I care deeply about equalities and making sure that we're having regard to our public sector equality duty. Paragraph 113, 114 of the report says that an equalities impact assessment was completed and approved before the construction of the cycle route. It's recommended the EQIA is updated to reflect the design changes once they have been approved. If I could quote the original EQIA that wasn't actually supplied as a background paper in yet another failure in this miserable report, it says, and I quote directly, the first line, "The document will be updated accordingly to document any changes to the design arising from subsequent stakeholder consultation." So can I please ask, why wasn't the EQIA updated? Have we had regard to public sector equality duty when producing this report? Because it appears we haven't. And finally, if we approve this report without having sight of an equalities impact assessment, do we leave ourselves open to judicial review by virtue of the fact that we haven't considered the needs of people with protected characteristics? I'm thinking primarily here of disabled people and elderly people, especially in light of the fact that the Kingston Association for the Blind are calling on the government to ban the use of shared use bus boarders. I'm very concerned about this.
Before I ask the officer to reply, could you please keep your comments polite, please?
Which comment in particular do you feel was rude, Madam Chair? I'll happily withdraw it.
The one about this miserable report. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to withdraw the word miserable and replace it with inadequate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, officer.
Chair, I could just respond on the equalities impact assessment. We will update should the report be approved tonight. Then we will update the equalities impact assessment before we, as the report says, to reflect the design changes and prior to any construction taking place. I'm not an expert, I'm afraid, on the sort of legalities of judicial review and so on and so forth. I'd have to defer to the legal team on that, but I believe that would satisfy things as far as I understand it. Clearly, if the EQA came back with something that was a critical issue that couldn't be resolved, then I think that would be something that we would then bring that back for further consideration.
Thank you. And can I ask why the EQIA wasn't updated when the designs did significantly and materially change between committee approval in February 2020 and construction in 2022? Because that seems to me a rather blatant breach of our public sector equality duty, and the fact that you've just confirmed it hasn't been updated since the original designs, which were all but thrown out by officers, was produced, that really does concern me. And so I'm really concerned that we leave ourselves open here to judicial review, not to mention blatantly breaching council policy with regard to the Equalities Act.
Matt, do you want to come back on that?
I'd have to take away and look further at the issue of whether and how it was updated or not updated between sort of design iterations. I don't have the detail of that in front of me, I'm afraid, but I'm happy to go and look at that.
The officer will come back to you on that, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think all that's left to say from me is that I think this report is wholly inadequate. I think all of my points have been explained in some detail here, and only to say that if members do agree it here this evening, it may well be subject to judicial review and may also be subject to being called into the scrutiny panel because it clearly breaches this authority's own guidance and clearly breaches our legal duties under public sector equality duty.
Thank you, Councillor John. Councillor Thorpe.
Chair, am I right in thinking that this report will now go to the Place Committee for further consideration?
This is what I'm told will happen in the next.
Thank you, that's what I thought.
If we are mindful to vote it through. Did you want to make any other comment?
Just to observe that there will be further discussion of this report at that stage.
Yeah, there will.
There won't. There'll only be discussion on the money.
Sorry, I wasn't aware that Councillor Giles was responsible for the agenda for the Place Committee, but I've now been informed of that. Thank you.
I understand our constitution, Madam Chair. If Councillor Thorpe wants to make comments, please do them on the microphone.
There's nothing in the Constitution about the microphone, Councillor.
Point of personal explanation. Point of personal explanation, Madam Chair. And please don't say, for fuck's sake, Councillor Thorpe, that's incredibly inappropriate. Point of personal explanation, Madam.
He didn't say that at all, actually.
Yes, he did. I heard that. I heard that. A point of personal explanation, Madam Chair. This committee is approving the designs for the Kingston Road cycle lane. We are recommending to the Place Committee they fund it.
Right, does anybody else have any more comments? If not, we're going to go to a vote. Yeah? Okay. A show of hands?
Yes.
Yes, please. Right. Those as per Annex in A1. Those, sorry? And the additional, to go to Place Committee. Can I have a show of hands for those in favour, please?
That's 10 in favour, Chair.
Those against?
Two against. Any abstention? No
Any
abstentions.
abstentions? No, that's 12. That's carried.
So that's carried, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 9, moving on. Expansion of the neighbourhood 20 mile an hour zones incorporating the response to Buxton Drive petition. We want to acknowledge and respond to the petition with 201 signatures calling for the introduction of a 20 mile an hour zone on Buxton Drive and surrounding roads in the new and old Malden neighbourhood. Just wait for Sonny to get to this desk. Thank you, Sonny. When you're ready, I'd like to introduce Sonny Pham, who's going to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I hope this is a lot easier than the previous one. My name is Sonny Pham. I'm one of the highways and transport engineer for RBK. I'm here to introduce the report, expansion of the 20 miles an hour zone in New Malden and Old Malden neighbourhood. And including in that, we responding to a Buxton Drive area petition calling for roads surrounding Buxton Drive to be reduced to 20 miles an hour. So we incorporate the two reports together, and I have listed all the good things and all the stuff that we officer believe that 20 miles an hour overall for the neighbourhood is the good thing. Good for the environment, good for the air quality, good for the noise, safer for pedestrian. We believe that 20 miles an hour, if you're involved in an accident, you'll probably be less chances in severe than doing 30 miles an hour. So we have listed all the good things in there, and I'm hoping that the committee have looked at the report and consider all the road that I have recommended in paragraph 3. Whatever, all the road in there that is 30 miles an hour at the moment, roughly 50% of the Malden neighbourhoods that still have 30 miles an hour, almost 50% already have 20 miles an hour from our previous, before the neighbourhood changes. But before I take any question or asking the committee to approve the all the road in paragraph 3, I like to make a verbal correction. Has been pointed out to me by some of the ward councillor that I have made a few mistakes in there. I would like to remove, or for record, I would like to remove a road called Brookwood Avenue. Apparently, it's a Rookwood Avenue. It's not in RBK, it's actually in Merton. Yeah. That's my mistake. Number 2 is a road called Green Lane. which is in Sutton rather than in RBK. That's my mistake again. And another road, the third one is called Aboyne Drive, which is just outside of RBK. So I do apologize, and I would like to remove them three out of paragraph 3 before I ask the committee to approve the report. Thus we would like to introduce 20 miles an hour for the whole of the neighbourhood, and responded to the petition of Buxton Drive as well. And if any questions, I'm more than happy to try to answer, and that's about it.
Thank you, Sonny Fram. I'd like to propose a recommendation as set out in page B1 of the report. Will you second that for me, Councillor Henderson, please?
I second that, Chair.
Thank you. Just wanted to note the late material on this item, which was tabled when you got here. Also, the lead petitioner, Mr. Holford, was unable to attend the meeting today because he had an appointment, and just to bring that to your attention as well. Thank you. So, comments from the public. Do I have any questions from members of the public on this item? If you wish to speak, I've just got one that had pre-registered, which was Mr. Andy Allen. If you'd like to come back here, and following Councillor Edwards after that. Thank you. Sorry, former Councillor Edwards. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm still Andy Allen, and I'm also here on behalf of the Kingston Cycling Campaign. We strongly support the expansion of 20 mile an hour speed limits to cover the remaining roads in the neighbourhood. The key to opening up cycling for everyday journeys is a combination of high quality protected cycle routes on busy major roads, in conjunction with a network of quiet 20 mile an hour roads in between to get to and from homes and destinations. This allows the widest, most diverse selection of everyday journeys to be completed safely, which we can see from the statistics in the late material is sadly not always the case today. And so we urge members to support this proposal. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And Simon Edwards? Mr. Simon Edwards, perhaps I should qualify you rather.
Yeah.
Then I won't get my titles mixed up.
Thank you again. And I'll be very brief. As you know, I support this measure. It was a regret of mine that we didn't push it through last time, to be honest. Green Lane. There is a green lane in Malden, an old Malden, isn't there? As well as in Worcester Park. So anyway. My main reason for supporting it is the safety reason. As Sonny said, you get hit by a car at 20 miles an hour, chances are you'll survive and make a full recovery. Hit by a car at 30 miles an hour, chances are you'll suffer at least life-changing injuries, if not death. I had plenty of experience of that when I was a personal injury barrister. I've seen CCD footage of accidents where this has actually happened. The car comes along, 30 miles an hour, someone walks straight out in front of it, they go up like that, come down with their head on the windscreen. It's not nice to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon Edwards. Does anybody else from the public wish to come and speak on anything? No? Okay. Then questions from the committee to officers, if anybody has any questions for Sonny Fram. Councillor Bolton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you to Sonny Fram for the report. There's a huge list of streets named in the report. Is that covering all of them in our neighbourhood? And if so, are you able to say which ones aren't covered? I'm thinking about obviously the main arteries. We have Traps Lane covered, I see, but is there anything that is missing still? I'm thinking particularly of Coombe Vale, which is my ward. I'm extremely pleased that this is coming forward, and I would fully support it. But is there anything that's missing that you can tell us about?
Can I answer that? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor. To the best of my ability, I counted 4 times, and I still make 3 mistakes in there. So I can honestly guarantee that all the roads that I listed in there are all the remaining road in the neighbourhood that is still currently 30 miles an hour. And 99.9%. If I make any mistake, I will come back and ask the chair for further approval. But I have checked the map that I included in the report, the whole of Kingston map. It actually showed the area of green and blue. All the green area that is still not 20 miles an hour, and I picked them all up. So I spent a lot of time on this, Councillor, so hopefully I'm correct.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Giles? No? Would you like to make a comment?
I do
Ask
have a comment, if I may. Thank you, Madam
I hope
Chair.
it's a nice one.
It is a lovely comment. It's only to say that, as I said at the start of the meeting, I've been campaigning for this for many years, and so I'm really pleased to see it finally come to fruition. It'll mean safer streets for all road users, and I hope everybody on this committee supports it. I hope we can do so unanimously. I think it's a brilliant scheme, and thank you to Sunny and the other officers for their work on this.
Thank you. Any more comments? Anybody else want to, or everybody want to move to a vote? No more debate?
Actually,
Thank you very much.
make a
Oh,
comment, please,
yeah, by all means. Councillor Sillett.
I just want to thank the residents of Buxton Drive. They really, got out on the street, knocked on a lot of doors. They've got to get 0.5% of the whole neighbourhood to get their petition through. If they hadn't worked so hard, this wouldn't be here now. There were other streets that tried, but they just don't have 0.5% of the population. So even though hundreds of people voted for this, they didn't quite reach the threshold. But Buxton got it through, and I think I'd really like to thank the residents there.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Any more for any more? No? Okay, we should go to a vote. So, the recommendation on B1 of the report, those in favour, please show your hands.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for coming tonight. We've had the Neighbourhood Manager's report, and there have been no further items, urgent items by the Chair. I close this meeting at 21:46. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Do.